Well, happy Friday. It's Geospatial-Next talk time. Today we're going to cover something, we're going to count down actually. Never done this before. I often post on LinkedIn and Twitter thoughts of the day and questions of the day. I thought I'd encapsulate some of that stuff in a talk today. This one is called the top 5 Geospatial-Next mistakes to avoid. So let's dive in. Number 5, don't act special if you are not. Those that aren't listening to the podcast, I'll describe the pictures I have on the screen. Long ago when I was a kid in England, one of our popular shows, not all American shows made it to England, but one of the must-watch shows for me and my friends was called Lost in Space, and it was made into a movie. And it was a classic. It wasn't meant to be a comedy, but it turned out to be a comedy. And there was a particular character in this called Dr. Smith, who made the show ultimately. But it set out to be a Family Robinson type, you know, these people get lost in space. And I always wondered in the opening credits, they had all the stars of the show, and then they actually had, right at the end, special guest star Jonathan Harris. And I always noticed that, and I thought, who's Jonathan Harris? Is he just in this one particular show? Well, the guy that played Dr. Smith purposefully wanted that included. He wanted to stand out as being something that we noticed. His name he wanted noticed because he was special. And as the show turned out, he was the show in the end, and he was special. But my point in saying that is, in geospatial, we kind of treat ourselves as if we're special. We come out with all sorts of terms for ourselves: geo AI, blockchain, geo blockchain, and more. We like to differentiate ourselves like we're something special. I've long thought that's a mistake. We need to focus on what value geospatial brings to the table. We're part of a team. We're not Dr. Smith. We're not the standout lead people in this world of business, essentially, is what we're talking about, or this adoption of geospatial. If we think we're special and we treat ourselves special, we will stay on the sidelines, a niche. So there's number 5. Number 4, stop telling a Swiss Army knife story. I remember long ago, and on the screen I've got a picture of a Swiss Army knife. I remember long ago thinking when ArcGIS Online, Esri's ArcGIS Online was released, what is this web-based SaaS solution? And I really liked it. I thought ArcGIS Online was a really great product release. But I couldn't kind of get my head wrapped around what it was. And when I spoke to people, and then I had my own company. I was an Esri partner. How was I going to describe that? And I started describing it as a Swiss Army knife because it provided lots of things. It was not only the ability to publish data, share data, but you had tools in there as well which could use that data. And over time, Esri added additional tools. So I always described ArcGIS Online as a Swiss Army knife, and it was kind of nice actually that some of the other folks within Esri, I think they probably still do, they still use that analogy for ArcGIS Online and other things within the Esri portfolio. But it was something I pondered for a long time and came up with and started talking about. So it was a good example of a Swiss Army knife. But too often we try to be something to everybody. And lots of organizations are guilty of this. We want to be everything to everybody. We want any work that can come our way, we'll take. That's an approach, but it's the wrong approach in my mind. We try and take on every and any project, but in reality, we don't. By doing that, we're not really understanding who we are and what we're good at, and as a consequence, we're poorly understood. So we end up being nothing at all, really. So I think that it's really important that we stop telling Swiss Army knife stories and tell the world our story or your story. Who are you? What are you? Define what you are. Have focus. So there's number 4. Number 3, avoid having a split personality. I really like that book Robert Louis Stevenson's The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And I think we all, when we look at ourselves, we're not quite as extreme as that, but we're always trying to kind of understand who we are and what we are. But a split personality is incredibly confusing. We don't actually know. I mean, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde are two people in one body. So I'm really talking about that internally. As a company, we can talk about internally ourselves. Do we understand who we are? I'm talking about within a company. Ensure all your staff know who you are. There needs to be alignment. That's not only your business, it's your messaging, it's your values, it's everything. Everyone needs to be on board on who and what you are. So I would say by avoiding a split personality, you need to lead with one identity, and it goes all the way down through the organization, but you need to understand who you are internally and what you are. Critical. Number 2, stay focused on the future. Don't forget the past. And I put this diagram up, which is a picture of TerraVision, which was released in 1994. And there's a new Netflix movie on this. What did Google's mapping products come out of TerraVision? It's controversial. I don't actually know the story there. On this diagram it says Google Earth 2011. I suspect that TerraVision was, if it was a foundation of something, it was probably Google Maps that came out in 2005. But either way, it really makes no difference. Where I'm going with this actually is, and let me tell the story. I remember in 2005 when Google Maps came out, and those organizations that were in the GIS industry, Esri and others, were shocked by its appearance and were very reactive and were very concerned about it. Now, where I'm going with that is that there were clearly things that were happening that were pointing the way to the release of Google Maps, Google Earth. And it sideswiped a lot of these companies that hadn't seen it coming. So they weren't really looking and realizing what the future held. They were kind of stuck in this is how we've done things and this is how we'll continue to do things. That isn't totally fair, because the reaction of folks like Esri were phenomenal, and what they came up with after that release was really excellent. So what I'm trying to say here is, within an organization, you've got to root out antibodies. What do I mean by antibodies? You've got those that are really resistant to change. There's reasons to be resistant to change, but antibodies tend to be resistant to all change. You've got to root those guys out, because they're stopping progress. I would also say that ideas are easy. We can come up with a million ideas, but as the Lego model describes, and if you haven't read the history of Lego, you need to do that, the 3 phases. An unbounded innovation phase 2, which nearly bankrupted the company. We'll go after everything, and we'll have all these millions of ideas, very few of which meant to market. They introduce this notion of sort of bounded innovation, where you say, these are the constraints. I don't want to use the word constraints, but have ideas within this box. You know, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is our value proposition. Have ideas around this, and we'll test them out. I sense that we're in the early days of the internet. There's a lot of noise, but the mist is beginning to clear. So I think it's really important that we stay focused on the future, as I've said in the title here. There are things, and I've mentioned this on in LinkedIn and Twitter. There are new developments in the world of blockchain. Now, blockchain is this enormous, out there idea. It's very confusing, but there's companies like Chainlink that are building some very important foundational technologies. Hybrid smart contracts is what they're doing, and oracles. And if you don't know anything about those, go look at them. It has enormous potential relevance to our industry, those that are producing location data and services. So keeping an eye on that is critical, what's coming. But as I try and finish there, and this one's a little bit, I hope you're following my logic in this one. Use yesterday as your launch pad to tomorrow. I think it's really important that we look at what's coming. We don't miss things and a sideswipe by things, but we're not totally throwing away our business model and changing it because something new's coming along. We're using what we have in the past to help us navigate the waters of the future. So how does Chainlink and hybrid smart contracts fit in with where we've been with GIS and geospatial? How does that fit in? There's a danger of ignoring the old and only going on with the new. And my belief is we have to use the foundation that we've already built, organizations like OGC, etc., to move the industry forward and to start using this new technology that's in place, but not ignoring the past. So stay focused on the future, don't forget the past. Number one, ta-da, build a geospatial innovation dream team. I love this picture. The Invincibles of 2018, a soccer team that look like they're a fun group to play soccer with. And I remember, actually, that term dream team was a weird thing. I remember the professional American basketball team were playing in the Olympics. I could never understand why they were called the dream team, because they're obviously going to kill everyone, because not many people play basketball, and you put these professionals against these other guys, they're obviously going to win. So the dream team idea was weird to me, but I've sort of adopted it a little tiny bit. And I remember humorously working for an organization at one time, and one of the guys posted on LinkedIn a picture of a group of these guys at a show, and he called them the dream team. And I chuckled, because actually what happened to that organization, ultimately it really wasn't a dream team, and they got, in soccer terms, they were relegated as a group. Not just a dream team, the group they were working with. So they really weren't a dream team, but the notion of it caught my interest and attention. I think really the team you want to be playing on is this one here. And anyone that doesn't recognize that chap, that's Pelé scoring in the 1970 World Cup. You kind of want to be playing on with that team. That's a team you'd be choosing. That's truly the dream team. So what I would say here is the geospatial market is changing, and changing very rapidly. I often use that term inflection point. I use a lot of the terminology like crossing the chasm. How do we, within this change, there's massive opportunities. So if change is upon us, I think the key question is, what does this mean for customers? It's a very confusing place, lots of change, but it's intimidating and scary and confusing. Innovation, and I've used that, you'll notice in this, I didn't just say build a dream team, I'm talking about an innovation dream team. That's quite important to note. Innovation does not only apply to technology, and I live in the innovation world, and my world is in large part not about the technology. I understand the technology and work with some incredibly clever people who keep me up to speed on the technology, but the world I sort of inhabit from an innovation perspective at 𝐀𝐯𝐤𝐿 is more on that question, you know, how the market is changing, and how do we, what does this mean for customers, the customers we work with and the customers we will be working with. So it's innovation in a slightly different way. So the way I would describe this is build a customer-focused innovation dream team. As we navigate these new waters and customers find themselves challenged, not knowing what to do next, there are new ways for us to help them solve problems, to get places quicker, to actually react in real time, etc., etc. So, you know, the value of geospatial is enormous. We have to cross that chasm and help customers take advantage of these changes. So there are my top 5 mistakes to avoid in Geospatial Next. I am Matt Sheehan. You can reach me at matt.sheehan@𝐀𝐯𝐤𝐿.com. I am on social media at @GeoMattSheehan, and I always love comments that you make, feedback that you give me. So please fire things my way, comment on things, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. Thanks very much for watching. Have a wonderful weekend.